In the South, a lot of places are flea markets rather than antique malls, and sometimes they're a hybrid of both. But can we find antiques and vintage that we can have fun with our collectors and also flip for a profit? We're going to find out right now. Come on, let's go. This is Amazing Things Antiques and Flea Market, and it's going to be a combination of both. We're going to see new, old, and in between. So let's see if we can find anything interesting. Well, right off the bat, we have something interesting. These are Maurice of California. Maurice was a company that I did not realize made figurines of this size. Up here we have various fan bases. I see Abington. I see a couple that are marked Roseville, but those are not. I believe those are actually brush pottery. Oh, I see. No, they're RRP, Robinson Ramsbottom from Roseville, Ohio. Not the same as the Roseville pottery that made the floral lines. These are all priced in the $35 to $45 range, except that this dealer is having a half-off sale. So there may be some things that are worth buying here for sure. Blue Mountain Pottery. This one is the blue splash with the label. You see a lot more in the green than you do in the blue. The blue came out in the 1980s when blue was such a popular decorator color. It's only going to be $3. That's going to go with me. The horses always seem to sell in pairs, interestingly enough. And they have $15 each, so that'd be $15 for the pair. That's actually a pretty good price too. When Blue Mountain started in 1947, they actually mixed the glazes in an old washing machine. The turquoise peacocks are California originals. They don't have the mark, but we can tell by this speckled glaze and the way the gold is applied. They are $62.50 after the discount. Two of the Hager Gazelles in black, $50 each after the discount. That's not a bad price. And they have a bunch of Abingdon pottery here, some nice colors and glazes from the 1940s, very good quality in the $20 to $25 range. If the shape of this reminds you of Fiesta pottery, well, it should, because this is oven served. This is Homer Laughlin, and you'll notice the mark on the bottom and the concentric rings, similar to Fiesta. This is their way to use the plain white color and then do transfers and pinstriping to make a different line. Oven serve is pretty collectible, although it doesn't sell for the price as Fiesta does. It is the same caliber. Well, it's nice they were having a sale, so we have a few things on the hold shelf already. Some nice glass in here. The Tea-Berry, this was Clark's chewing gum in Tea-Berry. This was a store display. It is Vaseline glass. It dates to about 1900. It'll say Clark's Tea-Berry gum on it. I think we can open this case. Yes, there we go. This one's in really good shape. They're usually chipped because they were used in stores and they just got shop worn, but they want $160, which is full value on that. $50 on the Fostoria heirloom. Also about the right retail price. This very deco-looking red pitcher here is a Hall piece, but this is actually made after 1969, believe it or not, because it has the oblong mark rather than the round mark. They did do some of their pieces later in time, especially in the 1980s when there was interest in deco again. So you will see Hall pieces that have those deco shapes that are later issue, and you'll want to look at that mark to know which is which. It's just after Christmas, but wow, these are only $1.50 each. Yes, they're lightweight. These were made in Japan, but these are from the 1970s. At that price, those three little carolers are worth buying, except this one has a little bit of a chip. They feel almost like a paper mache rather than a ceramic. But I think I will take the two that are not damaged because that's just a great price. And it's 50% off Christmas. I wonder if that means they're going to do 75 cents each. Here's a nice collection of Niloak missionware, and it's got the natural swirls. These are in the clay. It's not painted on. You'll be able to see that when you see down inside. This is a great collection with a bunch of the pieces. This was made around 1910, as they say. Niloak was in business there until the 1940s, but they only did the mission swirl up until, I believe, around 1930. Then they moved to the Highwood line, which were these molded wares like the pink vase here and the green vase here. Missionware is very collectible with arts and crafts collectors. It also looks good with Native American styles. And so prices have been high for a while. You see around 110 to 175 on these larger pieces. That actually is what they sell for retail, and they've been selling at that price level for years. The other really well-known pottery in Arkansas, of course, is Camark from Camden, Arkansas. And you see there, they are correct, 1926 to 1963, although the bulk of the production was done before the Second World War. After that, they were primarily just making small batches for tourists that came through. But they had some neat glazes, and if you see the paper label, that's a good way to identify them, of course. Sometimes they have Camark marked on them, and sometimes they just have a number, and the shape of the number is how you can tell. One of the more unusual pieces here I'm going to bring into view here better. It is this corn jug that says pure corn. It's an old whiskey jug. That's going to date to about 1930. It's priced at $65. Occupied Japan can be marked on anything made between 1947 and 1952, and I have never seen this interesting ruby red glass fly container before with the silver plate. That is just really unusual. Now, I'm not saying everybody would love to have that on their table, but my grandmother had a metal version, and I think she would have thought this was quite delightful. It is priced at $65. I have to say, for as unusual as it is, that seems like a reasonable price. Couple of little garage items, and boy, these are popular now. The shelf below, $95. I like buying things like this and using them in my antique shows for display until they sell. That's about the price I would get for it too. And of course, it is a flea market, so you're going to see all sorts of things: antique, vintage, newer, useful household items. This one's interesting because it's got the Astrodome on it, and of course that's long gone. These bottles were done every year by the American Bottling Company's convention. This is 1967 in Houston. They have this priced at about $10. That is about the correct price for those. This is the 1958 version back here. They would have the conventions in different places every year. 1958 Atlantic City. Today's planning is tomorrow's program. And that program went pretty well until everything started being put in plastic packaging in the 1970s, or aluminum in the case of soda. Here's the one from Miami, 1955. These sell well in Florida. A lot of these sell well in the places that they came from because they are interesting to people who like those styles or live in that place. And this one is the 1964 Chicago convention that shows even the Chicago Blackhawks and the Chicago Bears. It's nice to see coins in an antique mall that are actually more unusual and priced correctly for what they are. There's old Barber half dollars, and they have, for example, the 1906 New Orleans is priced at $18, but the 1899S from San Francisco is $22, even though it's more worn out because that's a scarcer one. There's a seated Liberty quarter from the 1870s, so they have really old pieces here. A lot of seated Liberty dimes from the 1800s, and of course, a whole lot of Morgan dollars. This is an area I'm collecting, and a lot of people really have interest in those. 1920s Vaseline stretch glass there, $55. That will glow under a black light. The stretch glass is like carnival glass, but they would actually stretch it in a way that would make it have more of a broken design. That was a way to extend the interest in carnival glass at a time when it was starting to fade in the 1920s, and I think it's a nice effect. More Camark pieces here. These are painted pieces in their art line. They did a lot in the iris and some of the other flowers. I like the candlestick pairs. I always thought these were really well done. I see prices between about $18 and $65 on these pieces, and of course this is going to be the most understood and well respected here in Arkansas, but there are collectors all over the country for these companies. Now again, in this part of the South, you're going to see flea markets that are real flea markets. So this is an antique store in part. It is also a flea market in part. The fun thing is that in this town, there seem to be 5 or 7 flea markets, more than we'll possibly be able to hit in one day. On the other hand, it means that for us, because we primarily want antiques and vintage and collectibles that our collectors want, we'll be walking through some of these spaces pretty quickly. That is not to say that resellers who deal in other things couldn't come in here and find stuff that was of value to them. Now here in the middle, it does pay to look in every space, even when you're seeing a lot of things that maybe are not your lines, because here we have 3 pieces of Fenton Carnival glass. The Spanish lace here in this very pretty blue tone. Now that's priced at $60, which is more than I can pay for it, and frankly is high-end retail to me. But then you have Precious Moments in their boxes. I know a lot of people don't get into Precious Moments because, well, they're common, but there are certain ones that really sell for good prices, and the prices on these are really low. I mean, $5 in the original box. So for people who are collecting this, and there are still some, this would be worth taking some time. And for resellers, it would be worth taking some time and trying to see which ones might be still collectible. And then down below here, this piece I'm betting is Italian. Oh, Portugal. Okay, that would have been the second guess. A lot of Portuguese painted pottery looks like Italian pottery, but was done at a little later time, 1980s and 90s primarily. And then this drape pattern is early American pattern glass. This should date to about 1890, 1900. $5 is a great price if you like it. I like a lot of the patterns. This is a master berry bowl. With the small berry bowl, there originally would have been a set of generally 5 or 6 berry bowls, the little ones to go with the master. A lot like what they call vendor malls in the Midwest. And it's just going to be a combination of overstocks, liquidation, new stuff. I see Funko Pops over there. These are new aluminum Christmas trees. You can tell by the base. Also, they feel tinsely rather than really like aluminum. You know, and they're going to sell everything from rugs to t-shirts in a place like this. Old signs, we've got Valley, I assume that's farm related. A very beaten portion of an old Goodrich sign. East, looks like someone ran over that one. Load restrictions enforced. Now this is embossed, so it's older. Embossed is always better if you can find it. And in the back, it looks like we've got receiving. This is a tether card. A tether card, this one is a wind-up where they would actually be tethered to a rope, and that would be how they were used. This one is a Noroko from the 1950s, priced at $75. Looks like an old race car from that time. Nice display of Watt pottery here. And one thing I enjoy looking for with Watt pottery, the apple is a very popular pattern. You see prices starting as low as $25, although that one is missing a lid. But I look for the ones that have advertising, because this was something they did in the Depression to keep themselves going. This one is Your Oil Man, $35. Cliftwood is a ceramics company we have not shown you before. We don't see a whole lot with the Cliftwood mark. This bowl is only $45. It's very interesting, variegated glaze. A lot of little jugs here. A lot of these were made by various pottery companies, sold to companies to put liquor in the 1930s and 40s. Ool Pottery did a lot of them, but a lot of other companies did too. And then you have some that are etched with the names of tourist attractions. These two here are Dryden pottery, and that older Melody and Glaze label with volcanic ash, that is an oval shape, and that is back when they were making these in Kansas before they moved to Hot Springs, Arkansas. It's rare you'll find one in circulation, but see the dollar bill that says Hawaii on the back? This was during I believe around the time of the Second World War. They made special bills that were supposed to circulate and remain in Hawaii, and they have a little bit of a collector value. Various green glass that glows under a black light, uranium glass as people are fond of calling it now. Most of these are Depression era pieces. The Dugan Swan with the double swan handle, the bowl in the back there, is the one I would draw attention to, because you will see those and sometimes people seem to miss those. They don't catch that they're actually glow in the dark. Now we're in the back part here, and again, this is a flea market. This is not strictly an antique mall, so you're going to have to look for the things that are antique and vintage, like these two McCoy planters here, the one that looks like a log. These are marked McCoy down on the foot. A lot of people overlook that because they don't realize they're McCoy. Then looking up here, the trout planter, I have a viewer who is a collector of fish planters. This one looks like it dates from about 1970. And there is our mark on the bottom, made in Japan. $20 is about retail price on these. A lot of different companies made them. They're kind of fun when you have a bunch of them together. And then this is a decent price for a collector or a reseller, $3.50 for the Tulip Swanky Swig. This would have originally had some sort of cheese product by Kraft in it. The cheese wasn't so great, so they had to bribe you by giving you a glass. They do have 3 of them Noritake Morimura marked dishes here, only $10 on this oblong one. That really seems like a good price. There's the Morimura 1930s made in Japan label. The M is for Morimura Brothers, who were the importers out of New Jersey. They did a great business, and then suddenly one day, well, the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor and their business was over. $15 on that bowl. And another scenic bowl underneath. We see a lot of the scenic painted bowls. That was very popular in the 1930s. And of course, this lusterware was something we see in the mid-30s. It's interesting that there's so much of it considering it was only made for about 4 or 5 years. We are starting to see people even collecting these kind of wood purses from the 70s with the decoupage. This one's only marked at $10, but you'll see some of the problems with these. The decoupage tended to wear not too well. So if you could find one in good shape, and they also tended to have very garishly decorated interiors. I am not certain. I know some of these were production, but I think some of these were kits as well. They do oftentimes have cool lucite handles though. And in good condition, this would be worth quite a bit more than the $10 they're asking. Another fun purse here. These are to look like Enid Collins. It's certainly not Enid Collins, but they have a neat look. And if the price is right, these do sell. However, this one has a bad handle, unfortunately. And that's a shame. It is priced at $20. And this one was made in Japan. So they jumped on that bandwagon for a while around 1970, about the time that Enid Collins sold her company and the label changed to Collins of Texas. Now this is very simple, but it's very Art Deco. It was probably handmade to be used in somebody's bathroom. I like these because, you know, I generally don't talk about painting and repurposing, but you can see it was made of plywood. It was inexpensive when new. You could paint this and use it in a new context. Somebody turned this one into a thing to hang necklaces, it appears, but I've seen these with mirrors on them, and it's got these great deco shelves. I do not mind handmade furniture if it's older. You can see it's older by these hinges here. A lot of people need extra room in bathrooms, and especially if they're redoing an old house, they can make this suitable for whatever they want to do in their renovation. $8 on the Pyrex Gooseberry is not a bad price. Not in this day and age when this stuff is so popular. That definitely would be a buy for a collector, and there's probably reseller room in that too. I am buying old newspaper boxes. People don't get the paper anymore. They are collectible. People actually are starting to stack these and use them as cubby holes and organizers and things in their house. Now, these are not in great condition, but if you find them that are pretty clean, they're selling for about $20 or $25 each. This space looks like it has some vintage mixed in with newer stuff. This little blue vase is probably Japanese, to tell you the truth. They did do a lot of this kind of glass, and sure enough, there's the label. It looks like it's an UNESCO product. They did a lot of different stuff in their time. Good color, not as good quality as an Italian piece, only $7 though. Atomizers from the 1930s became very collectible in the 1980s, so then companies started making new ones. This is from that time. $11.50 is not a bad price though. And I have a feeling you could sell this for a profit because people are really getting interested in this era of design. Some Hull drip glaze. The big brown leaf for $8.95 is probably the most interesting piece here. There's the oven-proof mark. If anybody finds the medium green saucers, I have a viewer who needs 6 of them. We would love to try to help him out. This is a very 80s thing, and if it was in better shape, I would be tempted to buy it. Unfortunately, it's broken in 2 places, but these figural mirrors from the late 1980s, especially if they have a signature, are starting to be collectible. Well, I have to admit I'm spoiled by places that are antique shows and meets and stores that are devoted to antiques. One nice thing about going through a flea market is you do start to notice things that maybe you'd forgotten about that were popular 30 years ago, for example, and you say, oh yeah, I'd forgotten about those, and all of a sudden it's in your head because the trends for tomorrow are things that currently are at garage sales and flea markets today. Although maybe not everything that you're seeing in the flea market is a trend for the future. Okay, vintage kitchenware. This is definitely trying to be very modern. $35 from the 1970s with that cubism. The touch and tear dispenser. This would have been for your, probably your wax paper, I'm guessing would be what you'd put in there back in that time. I suppose if you were doing just rolled paper and using it for shipping, you could utilize it that way. Big old Coca-Cola and 7-Up, an old restaurant sign here. This Coca-Cola is good. It's got obviously some damage in the middle of it, but it's a nice big size. And the 7-Up here, this is going to be from about 1970, and a Dr. Pepper. The 7-Up at 125 in this market is probably not bad. The prices on this stuff has gone up so much. Then they've got a green wall phone here for $30. That's not a bad price either. This old painted door was from some advertisement for Dog and Suds root beer, which is right down the street. It has a really cool neon sign that is older than this sign. I'll see if we can take a picture of it on the way out of town. Old motor oil cans. Now, a lot of these are the cardboard, and I have to say, I've had some bad experiences with them springing leaks if you can't store them in a cold place, so I would be careful about that. But one of the things you want to look for if you see this sort of thing is anything with aircraft, because people find that interesting. This one is all metal. Synthetic jet engine oil, $12. That is actually not a bad price for that because of what it is. Snowmobile oil. So there's some oddball things in the oil can collecting that people look for that are a little different. Here's one down here that is outboard motor oil. Now here's a space that's more to the antique side, and it, it just depends space to space, but this is a very handsome little low cabinet and a great size. People are looking for smaller things. They just want to highlight a few things. I think people are less interested in giant china cabinets full of stuff you never look at, but if you can display a few things, then you're onto something. This one is priced at $350. It says it was a music cabinet. Let's see if we can verify that by opening it up. And indeed it was, and this is fancy for a music cabinet of that time. That's where your sheet music or records or discs would have sat. So this is a pretty neat little piece. A little different form than I'm used to seeing. This is nice as well. This is 1890s approximately, and this is pine. And you can tell the age by the way that the foundry is done, the way the designs are done on the cast iron there. Nice little jelly cupboard. They would refer to them as jelly cupboards because they would put up their jams and jellies and then store them over the winter in little cupboards like this. Very pretty little celluloid top box here too from about 1900. This would have likely been a glove box because it's so long and narrow. And indeed we find gloves inside. The condition's pretty good on this one. You want to make sure they're not peeling or broken where the celluloid is attached. And the price on this is $25, which is not bad considering the condition is good overall. That's kind of tempting. That might have to go home with me. It's missing just a little of the paper on the edge though, and that's a little bit of a minus. This is a Whiting and Davis little silver bag, and I'm actually out of these right now. It's priced at $20. I actually think that that's something that could double, especially because it's got the mirror in it. And it does have the Whiting and Davis label up in the corner. This looks like one that would have been made sometime around 1950. So I think I may get that. Let's see what else we have here. Cute old Daffy Duck cutout. This is just something somebody made at home, but it's got some age now, priced at $95. a Lane painted cedar chest. Now, one thing about the old Lane cedar chests is that they settled a lawsuit about 20 or 25 years ago because those locks, they were very good, but if you were like you're a kid playing hide and seek and you got in them, they were sometimes would jam and you couldn't get them to open again. So if you're buying an old Lane cedar chest, make sure the lock mechanism works. This one actually has its original tag, and we'll be able to tell from the tag about what era this is. They have it priced at $295. And there you see a very 1980s looking family. So this is going to be early 80s. You fill it with the magic moments of a lifetime, and sometimes your children, and sometimes you can't get them out. But it was originally $630 when it sold back then. Fostoria heirloom again, only $29.50 on the candle basis. Those are pretty good prices there. Sometimes they have a really nice long pull, and then I get really excited about them. I like the tobacco jar with the Bedouin. And in the middle is a Royal Dalton Dickens wear line, and it says Micawber on the front. That was one of the characters. Micawber is expectant. A good luck horseshoe pattern carnival glass piece from about 1910 or 15. I always like that pattern. Marigould's the most common color. In the blues and purples, that sells for around $100. This is Fenton with the sailboats, this little bowl here. And then the dragon and lotus pattern, also a very famous Fenton pattern. Here's a half doll made into a pincushion, and it's got its original fabric. This looks like something from about 1920, and it's priced at $19, which seems pretty reasonable. Westward Ho, the stag and deer. This is something that Danny the Niche Lady collects, and I think she's onto something. Early American pattern glass is starting to make a comeback. I like these satin pieces, and the very strong designs like this do well. You see the deer on the one side and the Native American finial. $59 each on the covered sugar and the creamer. Big old enamelware. You see the 1940s or 50s with the clear percolator top, and then the earlier version that's just the gray. Wool pottery, the big jug here, made its way from Indiana. Here's a Stangl clock. This is one of their dinnerware patterns that was made into clocks around 1980. It's got the original non-quartz on the back. And then look at this cute little rocker. It's a child size made out of snowshoes, and this is $85. Somebody mounted this big old oaken wagon wheel on a stand. They have $250 on that, but that's a neat display piece. And then here, believe it or not, in the 1970s, our corner grocery store where I grew up still was using this old style Coke cooler where you put the ice in the top and you had to put your hand in the cold water, which on a hot day was great. In the middle of winter, not quite so great. Butcher blocks are still really popular, and this is a very rustic, very worn one with a great look for $2.95, which is really not a bad price for what it is at all, with the giant hay tongs leaning up against them. Wow, these big fan bases and the swans, the ceramics must have been really popular in this part of Arkansas, because to see so many of these 1940s and 50s pastels in one place is interesting to me. Prices seem to be between $25 and $75. This one goes with those birds that you saw earlier. This is, I believe, also a California Originals. I think there's even part of the tag on it that tells us right there. California Originals from Manhattan Beach, California. This booth also is 50% off, so I'm going to see if I can find anything else there. That's cute, but I don't think it's old. Here's a treasure craft piece with the shell. This one's from Palm Springs. They would do, this was called the nameplate line. You could have any attraction you wanted put on there. So you'll see them from all over the country. Hall teapot back here at half price. This one is now down to $15. That's a good deal. Here's a Shawnee piece that could be a sleeper because it does not say Shawnee. Here's the swan. And there's your USA mark and their stock number. See how the A tips a little bit away from the U and the S? That's how I know it's Shawnee, and this dealer must have figured that out too, because they have it correctly attributed. At half price, this is $10. That's a pretty good deal right there. We're going to look back here. There's a Hall teapot that was only $10 to start with, and it's a great color, and it's the Aladdin, so I have to believe that there's something wrong with it to be that inexpensive. Yes, it says it has small chips on the inside rim on inside the top, but I really wanted to see the piece under it anyway, just because of the modernist shape. It says it is Rigo of California. I don't see a lot by this maker. I think they were very small, and they only operated in the 50s. There's the Rigo signature. There's a very small mark on the back. That's a stock number. Interesting enough piece for $12.50. Let's see if we can't position it so it's a little more visible for them. There we go. Now, are these guys old? Certainly a fun design, and yes, they are Japanese from the 1950s. There are two of them, and they are only $8 each. Wow. However, it looks like they originally had lids. Bronzes and things that look like bronzes and anything neoclassic are really becoming popular again. This very stately dog is not a heavy bronze, it's a bronze shell. This is 1980s by a company called Toyo from Korea, but even these are starting to sell fairly well. $65 is about the right price on that. This one here is nice and heavy. Also not terribly, terribly old, $65, but again, those are prices that those things will sell. Good old motor oil sign here from a 1950s or 60s era garage, and in fact, they've got a lot of signs in this space. That's cool. You know, we're not seeing as many of these in the market now because they're so popular and the prices have gone up so much that a lot of the old stuff has sold. Morton Salt $165, a little bit rusty around the edges on that. Quick refreshing lift, nothing does it like 7-Up, 1957. Now the Harley sign is a reproduction, a little too perfect, but these Coke chalkboards, those are real. The one on the left from about 1980 is $95, the one on the right, $165. Cool cowboy clock. Usually you just see the horse, so the cowboy is harder to find, $75 on that. This is only $20 for the radio, and it's even got some of the old, you could get these little kits that would come with them so you could put your local radio station's name there and do presets. This one for that price, I have to believe, couldn't be in working order because that is a steal, but if it's in working order, it's coming with me. Another $20 radio over here. These plastic ones, though, when they get scraped up, take restoration to make right. It's hard to match the colors sometimes. $20 on the donut phone is not a bad price either. That is a classic 1970s design there. And speaking of 1970s, Kojak, the stakeout detective game, and Bionic Crisis, the Bionic Man. Very exciting back in the day. This is actually a neat store display, Beech Nut Tobacco with the lip top. It's an original one. It's dustproof. It's $95. For the condition, that's probably about right. This gal is cool, Little Miss Muffet. I haven't seen this cookie jar in a really long time. I think this might be by Abingdon, but we're going to take a look. Oh, yep, it sure is. I only knew that because when I picked it up, the lid was really heavy. They didn't do a whole lot of painted ware, and they really didn't do this for very long because in 1950, they realized that their main business of making bath fixtures was more profitable, and so they shut down the pottery line and they turned it into a bath and toilet making company, and that is Briggs today. Now there's more than just aluminum pitchers, although those are really cool to see, and at prices as low as $12.50, but they also did bowls. You don't see those as often. Finding them without the coloring worn is the trick, and no scratches. A whole section of Army surplus here. There are collectors for older militaria and for specialized things like the fact that this is airborne. U.S. Army parachute team Golden Knight. See, this specialized stuff is what's more popular with people, but there's a really good vase behind this that I have to say I'm more interested in. Although this is really cool. This is $30. Actually, that's pretty neat. I might be interested in this too now that I've taken a moment. I don't think it's wildly old though. We're going to look at the tag and see that it has the more current care information on here. But behind here, I hope they don't know what it is. This is Blanco Big Sky. See the mountains in the bottom? This is from about 1980. They only made it a brief period of time. It is hard to find, and they have $18 on it, and it is mine. I am very excited about that. And here's the trick. This guy carries military surplus. He happens to have a bunch of glass. It's mainly from the 80s. This particular piece is also from the 80s, but it's a really good piece. You do have some nice antique furniture here. This is a nice old card sideboard from about the 1910, 1920 vintage with the barley twist on the sides. In fact, this actually might be as far back as 1900 to 1910 as I look at it up close. Interesting carved panels. Original mirror. You can see the reflection. There's a gap because this mirror has never been replaced, and old mirrors are thicker. I've seen these with owls, I've seen these with leaves, but we are in cotton country here, and these are little cotton balls. Cotton and leaves. Interesting plaque done about 1980. $8 seems like a good price. And here's another one that's depicting cotton with a signature for $6. Old speckled plastic is very collectible. That's why, unfortunately, some reproductions have been made. This is a company called Zaki. It is not as heavy as the original Melmac. And it does say Zaki Designs on it. And it also says a bunch of stuff that lets us know that this is really recent in vintage. Fine if you like the look, but not nearly the quality of the original. And here's a 1940s washing machine, very similar to the one that Blue Mountain Pottery used to make their glazes when they first opened in 1947. So up above this stuff, which is all newer, is a really great display up by the ceiling there. McCoy oil jars in the $65 to $125 range. Those are 1930s. That is not a bad price for any of those because you just don't see them, and the sizes are good, the colors are great. And then there's a bunch of crocks. The Union stoneware from Red Wing is $2.25, the jug in the middle. A nice old Monmouth number 4 there. Wool pottery. This is a neat one, the Eagle pottery out of Macomb, Illinois. I believe that is $150 on that one. And then this is neat. I don't know who Evans Handmade Pottery was, but now we know they existed, and they were from Dexter, Missouri. So I'm going to look them up and see if I can find any examples of things they made. That looks like it's from about 1950. Their old sign is $125. And then this is neat because it's the old poultry waterer. Always sanitary. They've also got quite a bit of cutlery and military. The prices seem reasonable for what they are. I don't see anything that's particularly unusual, but they're all priced in the $60 and $75 range, which seem to be selling prices these days. They also have a lot of military patches and insignia. If you look at the back, if they are fabric, you know they're Korean War or earlier. If they have sort of a plastic coating, that's Vietnam and later. We see a lot of crockery, but we don't see a lot in the mugs. These are from about 1900 or 1910. The flying bird is a fun motif. $75 each on those. And because I have a Dr. Pepper lover in the audience, I wanted to show they've got a couple of the old electric clocks and a couple of the old signs, 1960s era. That is pretty cool. We just don't see a lot of Dr. Pepper. This is China Craft. It's from the 60s. They didn't make a lot of stuff. I think they're a California maker, and the design's really good. I mean, this seems to be the piece that you see out there with this texturing, and it's good because it's a neutral color. It'll go with just about anything. It's grayish. $12 seems like a good price. Yeah, well, we'll see if that might clean up. An unusual Fenton piece here because of the purple edging on the basket, $75. Advertising for the Chrysler Simca. This was a car that they imported briefly, the Simca Ocean.
It was an attempt to have a little sports car in the Chrysler line in the early 60s, but Simcas were really not rugged enough for American roads, so that didn't last. Fenton piece here in lavender for $47.50. And then this case here, beyond more Camark, including the famous S&P salt and pepper shakers by Camark, which are probably the most commonly seen thing by them. They've got a bunch of railroad locks right here. And the ones with the keys are running in the $65 range because having the original key with it is an important thing. A lot of times those are marked with the railroad's line on it. And then some lighters here. The Zippo with the box is going to be priced the most expensively, but the Zippo with the lighters on it, that's kind of meta, and that's seems to be only in the $15 range. I think that's a pretty neat one I haven't seen before. The one next to it for Sardi's, of course, Sardi's is a very famous hotspot restaurant. $9 on that. And original bottles for Mountain Dew and Kickapoo Joy Juice. You're seeing the Mountain Dew being produced again now, but you can tell the difference from the old. I think these are great, and these would probably sell in Florida. They were by a company called Clay Sketches, and they are from the 1950s. You can see this mark here. Dalmatian heron. You've got the pink heron here. I think this is a different company. Yes, this is Stuart B. McCulloch out of California. These would absolutely go in Florida. And at half off, which is $15, I honestly should probably buy every one of them.
Okay, so I'm unpacking what I got at the antique and flea market in Arkansas, and this will be a quick little haul because I didn't buy a whole lot. I could have bought a lot more ceramics. There were plenty of things I could have easily doubled my money on there, but the car was almost full and I was close to home, so I had to be very selective. So I picked the things that were the best deals or things that I thought were perfect for my upcoming Florida show season. Let's take a look at what we got. The first piece here, this little angel, yes, I know Christmas is over, but these do sell. She was 75 cents after the discount. This is one of the reasons that flea markets are good places to shop. This piece here, now this was $19. I get about 35 to 40 for these. This will sell very quickly in Florida. It's Whiting and Davis mesh from the 1950s, and I was out of these, so glad to have another one. They always doll up a boudoir, and they definitely are good to put in a jewelry case for me. Now, one thing about being in a flea market is that, yes, you have to look at a lot of useful household items, but, you know, sometimes we need them. And these Method soaps were only $1.50 each. You know what those go for in the stores. So that's one of the reasons that these flea market hybrids are actually fun to shop, because you can get things you just need as well. Then the birds. I was very happy to get these. They are such great colors, exotic birds, good heights. The little blue mountain one is teeny, but it was really inexpensive. The two from the 1950s, I paid $15 a piece. Those should go for $35 to $40 in Florida, and they will sell immediately at the first show I do. And then the little blue mountain piece is from the 80s. It's the blue splash with the original label. It was $3. I couldn't leave it for that price. This is Blanco's Blue Sky. I'm going to hold it up so you see the mountains in the bottom there. They had to blow it into a mold to get that. You can see the pontil. Then they had to actually polish it out so that it didn't disrupt the design. It was a hard piece to make. They only made it in '82. Those were not good years economically. People may not remember, but the first few years of the Reagan years were very difficult economically. And because of that, these are scarce. I paid $18 for this. The most recent sale of one of this line was a picture on eBay that went for $200 plus shipping. So I am really excited about finding that piece for $18. I think it was a real score, and I suspect that overall I'm probably going to get about $300 to $325 out of a $75 total purchase. So very happy with my excursion there. And we proved the point, and that was that antique/flea markets in the South are definitely places that you can find fun collectibles and resellers can get bargains. So now you know, when down south, if you see flea markets, they can be places to shop for antiques and vintage that are real and of real value.
If you enjoyed this video, check out this one. Also, click thumbs up to like this video and check the description for information about our Patreon, our memberships. We've got a lot of different levels with different perks and bonus videos and early content. Also, please do check out our website, theantiquenomad.com, for appraisal help. And we'll see you again for more adventures in the antique and vintage community soon. Bye for now.